Welcome to Safe and Sound, sponsored by White Mountain Fire and Life Safety and Ladies Day LLC. Today on the show we have Tim Newton-Pender, the principal for Holbrook Junior High School. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This is the first time having you here.
Yes.
It's going to be exciting. We have a lot to talk about. One of the things that happened and why we asked you on the show is I'm the emergency manager for Navajo County and with Katrina Rowe, and I'm underneath Mary Springer, who's the emergency director for Navajo County. And you had invited us out to see some safety drills that your school had done, and you guys impressed us. And we thought that it would be a great idea to bring you guys on the show and to discuss these safety drills, and so that other people and other schools see what's going out there and what's required of them. Okay. So, and you guys did. You did a phenomenal job. I was overly impressed, and so was Katrina. I was like, I didn't even realize that you had to do some of these drills. One being earthquake, because you think in Arizona. I mean, I came from California, where there's earthquakes all the time, to here, where thinking, oh, I'll never have to deal with an earthquake again, and that's not true.
Absolutely. What we first started was probably well over a decade ago, and our district safety coordinator, Ann Gardner, who actually really brought this to our attention as a district, that we needed to do more drills, more safety preparedness for our students, and that there are other things out there besides a fire. Yep. And that general fire drill once a month, and that there are catastrophes or natural disasters or sometimes chemical leaks from the freeway or the railroad that we might have more of a chance that we're going to face than a school fire, and that we need to be prepared to keep the kids safe in those situations as well.
That makes a lot of sense when you bring the railroad in because of where you guys are. Because I know that with emergency management, we hear a lot of stuff, and we actually do a lot of trainings, and they always bring, especially hazmat situations, they always bring the railroad in because of things being transported off there. And I didn't even think of that, so that's important to do, definitely. Now, your kids were very well, they knew what they were doing.
Well, again, and that comes from years, like I said, over a decade ago. We started these drills, and so you're looking at students in the junior high who have now gone through these drills since possibly kindergarten, and so and that's where you want them to be, where it's natural. Mm-hmm. And if we, for instance, if we have a substitute teacher who isn't familiar with our drills, we have some simple instructions on the back of their sheet when they come to substitute for our district. However, it'll be the students that'll tell that substitute exactly what to do in that drill situation, because they're so well versed in it, and they've practiced so many drills. Which is
practice makes perfect, and they did it pretty perfectly. Yeah. And with these drills, now there's drills that are required. Who's requiring these drills out of the schools? Is it emergency management? Is it the state? Who requires these drills?
You have requirements from several different entities.
Okay.
But our district requires a pretty extensive set of drills that range from natural disasters to such as tornadoes or high winds or a earthquake. All the way to, again, like I said, to your fire in your school or smoke present, chemical releases from the freeway. And so we want to practice each and every one of those. At least a fire drills every month, mm-hmm. but your other drills, we want to practice them at least 4 to 5 times a year.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. And it was nobody ran, everybody was in a line, everybody knew what to do, which is important. And when you have that many students, it's very impressive to be able to get everybody to cooperate like that and to take this seriously. because a lot of kids are like, but all of them, they took it very seriously and they knew exactly what they were doing. And that also shows for the younger kids. If the younger kids were out there seeing, you know, what these older kids are doing, they always look up to them, and it's a good way to lead by example. Definitely. And I hope that, you know, people watching this with other schools or parents watching this realize that there's some drills out there that are necessary for their schools to do. Make sure your schools are doing these drills with your children. And you know, if they have any questions, they can contact, you know, emergency management. We can get them in contact with you.
Absolutely.
So that they know what to do. I mean, not only do you have these drills, and it's not just, you know, the fire alarm going off and exiting the building. You guys have, you've gone above and beyond, and you have these packs with information that's necessary, you know, to keep the kids together.
Yeah.
And you actually brought it, which I think is this was really cool. When we saw this, we're like, are you kidding me? It's in my Go Pack, which is huge for emergency management.
Yeah, and it's our Pack and Go, and every classroom has this in their room. Every teacher, and inside it is some general necessities, just some needs that such as garbage bags and tarps and so forth, and some first aid equipment for just some smaller injuries, kind of
maybe a laceration.
Right, some little lacerations or so forth. But most importantly, we have you know, a crisis management guide. Now this is kind of your in-depth book that if something was happening, we're in the midst of let's say a chemical release. Okay. There's a quick guide in here that would take the teacher to that and tell them exactly what to do. Even though we've rehearsed it, again, it reinforces this is what you need to do.
Well, and in a stressful situation, it's good to have a backup.
Exactly.
I mean, sometimes people forget the number to 911. So
exactly.
So that's always a bonus.
And then also, we have each individual school site emergency response plan. And so in here we have the names. Each year it's updated, and so we have the names of teachers and administrators, custodians. It doesn't who's in charge of what during that year. And so you may have first aid trained teachers. They're going to be in charge of triage. This is what room it's in this year. This is where you take those students who may be injured, so forth, or this is who you call. And it's just all in here, updated each year.
That's awesome.
For who's in charge of what situation. And then finally, most importantly, is a clipboard of that teacher's updated rosters, student rosters, again updated every month at minimum. We update it even more frequently than that when we have students in or new students.
Okay.
And so it'll have an updated roster, as well as contact information for that student, parents, phone numbers, so forth. And so in an event where we scatter and then we have to come back together in a reunification somewhere, that teacher knows exactly who's supposed to be in their class, who they're responsible for, and again, contact information as well.
Well, I noticed that there was a part where you had the kids were all sitting there and the teachers had colored cards.
And that's attached to this backpack as well. And these are quick reference cards. So, for instance, if something was to take place, evacuation quick strategies, what do we do in those events? And so again, real quick reference cards for that teacher to refer to. And then as well as these two cards help by signaling if that teacher in an evacuation, if that teacher needs some assistance or everything's clear, all is good.
Okay.
And
so the green is for clear, and then red is for need assistance.
Right, need assistance for one reason or another. It may be I don't have everybody on my roster. I'm missing somebody. He may be with another classroom.
Okay.
And so, but that'll at least signal that we need to start looking for that student. And again, it may be just simply two aisles down in another student's or another teacher's classroom.
It's just in case to have that. Now, are parents in Holbrook, do they realize how extensive you guys are doing this and how great this is? I mean, are they brought in on this at all, or do the kids go home and possibly tell them?
I think I think the students go home and talk to their parents, and but I really don't. I know they don't know
The extent.
the extent that we've put into this, and you know, they don't. I guess there's not a need that they understand the extent, because that's our job, is to keep those kids safe.
Absolutely.
And so it's not kind of a publicity stunt. It's just, we need to get them safe. We need to have them safe in any of these events. And the nice thing is we've never had any pushback from parents on what kind of drills we're running, or absolutely 100% in.
Well, no. The other thing that's really good about this is kids can take it home with them, and if there is an earthquake and they're in their home, you know, if there is, you know, the tornado. In fact, I didn't think, you know, I'm like, we don't have tornadoes up here, but I heard Holbrook's had a couple, you know, dust devils, maybe a little bit larger than that. And today I was looking at the sky, and my husband called me and said he's used to tornadoes, and he goes, you know, it's calm. Have you seen the clouds? I'm kind of freaked out a little bit about this. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. We're not going to have a tornado in Show Low. Well, I was talking with NOAA, which is our weather people, because of the rainstorms we've been getting. And I said, you know, crazy question. Just, is it possible to get a tornado? And he's like, well, actually, you know, we saw some turning today, but it wasn't enough, and it wasn't big enough. And he said, but yeah, there's a possibility there. Now, wherever there's a possibility, you know, now you have a drill for it. And that's great, because you're prepared for that. And I guarantee you there's schools up here that aren't. And that's sad. And I hope they see this and want to reach out so that they can prepare those kids. And like you said, number one thing is to keep those kids safe and to get them back home.
Right.
You know, and with that, the stuff that you're doing, what I was saying earlier, is you get to take this home with you. These kids know these drills at home too. They can use them at home. They can find those void spaces, or those spaces where they need to, you know, protect themselves. Right. Something that we were talking about before we started the show was, I was trying to find you guys just some pictures, because I had some really cool pictures of some void spaces, and I can't find them from when I was a firefighter. And I was discussing how there was a guy that said, no longer, you know, you no longer get under your desk. You want to work on those void spaces and aisles and next to maybe the walls and stuff like that. And you said, yeah, that was probably a decade ago, correct?
Right.
Yeah, and I'm just realizing that, which is horrible, because in California, that's what we did. We dropped and got underneath the desk and covered our head.
Absolutely.
Every time. And I don't know if they're still doing that. And I know that what I've been reading, there's a lot of controversy when it comes to this. Red Cross is saying, no, still get under your desk. And then this other guy who has gone to so many building collapses, like 400 or 500 building collapses, and is seeing this, is saying, no, do this, you know, instead. And this should be the new way. And I personally agree with him. You know, he's seen it. He's been out there. Right. You know, I know that our buildings are built different in here, you know, America, because he's over, I guess, in other countries witnessing this. But if a building was going to come crashing down, it's no different than anywhere else. It's still going to come crashing down. Right.
You're still looking at gravity and physics.
Yeah.
And the fact that being under a desk that has very weak type, you know, aluminum legs, it's going to collapse under weight.
Absolutely.
And so you don't want to put yourself under that, you know, under that structure. You want to put yourself up against something strong, which would be a wall, maybe even the teacher's desk, but up against that. So if something did fall, it would create that triangular void that
you need to survive.
You would be in, and so that's what we try to teach our students, that if a situation you had to shelter in place because of high winds or because of a tornado that we had no warning of, and simply you need to shelter in that exact room that you're in right now, we encourage them and the teacher to find the area away from windows, of course, because of flying objects, and again, in that same protective position, but
Absolutely.
up against the wall or up against a strong structure, in hopes that you are in the safest spot possible.
It doubles your chances than
correct.
being under something that's going
Right.
to squash you. And the other thing the guy had said is even on the freeway. He's like, on the freeway, don't sit, if you're underneath, I wouldn't want to stay underneath an overpass, but he says if you're underneath an overpass and you're in your car, you'll get crushed.
Right.
If you're next to your car, you have a better chance of surviving.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
because you create that void.
Right.
And I've become a little obsessed with that controversy because I'm like, wow, that kind of makes sense to me. It really does. And I feel like, hopefully Red Cross will, and I don't know, maybe these were old articles and maybe Red Cross is up to date now on that, but hopefully they'll come out with some more information to help other schools as well and other people at home. I mean, I remember a kid in California during earthquakes. One earthquake lasted long enough for us to run under a door jamb, run under the table, run back outside, run back in. It was just like, and my dad's like, oh no, we got to go here. Nope, this isn't safe. We need to go here. And it was because we weren't prepared. We're in California. Right. You know that the earthquakes are happening in California and they're going to happen often, and then you're going to have a couple days of aftershocks. And you think with that and knowing that this is going to happen, we would have been more prepared for the family. But all you hear on the news or in radio, on the radio or in newspaper articles is get in a door jam, right. Get in here. I mean, I know that during my husband and I went to Oklahoma, which. No offense to Oklahoma, but Oklahoma terrifies me, and it's because of their tornadoes. I've never been, knock on wood, through a tornado, and that and sharks. I just can't handle them. So we drove right after El Reno, I think, El Reno or El Rey. There was a big tornado, 5-mile tornado. We drove there the next weekend, and we passed the devastation. And I could not believe, it was amazing, the wreckage, and it was amazing what happened. Yeah. And it just missed, probably by, I want to say 50 yards, an entire pipe making company with just huge pipes everywhere. Right. I was like, are you kidding me? It just missed that. So we go in and we stay there. I did not sleep one bit the whole night. Rob says, well, it sounds like a freight train. Well, it sounded like a freight train to me all night long, and it was windy, and I was freaking out. So I didn't sleep, he didn't sleep. I made him move Audrey away from the window, and he told me, he's like, well, if it comes, just get in the tub. You're telling me just to get in a tub and what, cross my fingers? This is insane. Right. I want something better. I want a bunker. Yeah,
oh, absolutely, yeah. I was actually living in Kansas just a couple years ago, and actually was in Hutchinson, Kansas, during that record-setting night where over 100 tornadoes touched ground.
Oh, I remember hearing that. Yeah.
And I was in Kansas.
Oh, geez.
And yeah, absolutely not a basement in the apartment that I was at, and so. Again, you just look for, those voids, and that I knew that I probably needed to get between the bed and the wall. Mm-hmm. And because if something collapsed, I felt that would be the safest spot, that there would be a void and that I could survive in that spot if something happened.
Absolutely.
And again, it's that same concept of where can we put kids if we did not have a warning? Mm-hmm. Where could they be? And now we have an additional drill that if we are given warning, and if a tornado is spotted and it's 2 miles away headed towards our facility, then we actually can move the students to the safest spot on campus.
Oh, okay.
And we have those designated, and we run through those drills as well. That if we have warning, what's even safer than the classroom? Which
would be nice. I know that, and again, tornadoes terrify me, and I know that some of the stuff that they're doing out in the areas they have them is they're buying helmets for kids to wear. I saw that.
It's brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. And the lady on the news was like, I don't know why we didn't do this years ago. Because things are flying around, and that's why you're constantly covering your head. But this just adds for extra protection, and then you can cover your neck more. And it's finding out, especially being emergency management, it's finding out these disasters and researching these disasters and figuring out, one, how we can survive, how we can mitigate, the disaster before and after, the after effects of it. What to put in place so that we don't lose life. And we don't lose the availability of services. With the county, We have a plan called the COOP plan, and it's the Continuing Operations Plan. And what it does is after a disaster, we need to be able to provide services to the community still. So how are we going to do that if we lose our
Right.
building?
Right, exactly.
You know, and that's something that we are starting to practice, and we're getting into. All this stuff that, you know, like what you guys have been doing for a decade now is so important for not only schools to realize, but businesses and the entire community and people to realize at home. I mean, being a firefighter for 9 years, my daughter knows fire drills. It's just something she knows. I have smoke detectors and CO detectors
Right.
around my house. You know, I'm set when it comes to fire, and I feel confident in that. Audrey, we have a meeting place. She knows that stuff. But I've never practiced an earthquake at home. I've never practiced a tornado at home. You know, and
Yep.
that's not a good thing. I really need to, and I'm sitting here going, wow, I need to go and teach Audrey what a void is. You know, I need to teach Audrey where to you know, go in the event, you know, and I guess in a tornado it's a bathtub and with a mattress over you.
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
You know, I just try to get in. I would get in the safest spot that I thought,
and make that decision
Right.
yourself. And that's what I would end up doing with Audrey, and I'd talk to my husband, we'll sit down, and that's what I need to do. I need to plan with my daughter, because now if the school isn't doing it, or if she's in a supermarket with her dad, or, you know, something, when disaster or tragedy strikes, she knows what to do. She feels more confident in herself, a little bit safer. And that's what it is. It's not just, you know, making sure that these kids are safe during a disaster, but it's also teaching them something to keep them calm,
Exactly.
you know?
Oh, you're exactly right. Because if you have repetition, you know, and practice with a drill, then what you're wanting them to do, where you're wanting them to go, getting themselves to safety or keeping themselves safe, just becomes it's natural. And so then they can focus on other things, because again, just the response is natural. It's a trained response. And you can see that in these students with it, like you were saying,
Yeah,
12,
absolutely.
13, 14 years old, and as soon as they're given directions, they go right to it. They're not asking each other, what do we do?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
they just naturally respond.
And I think that in the long run, they'd be able to help their families at home.
Right.
You know, I did a lot of fire prevention training for kids, and I remember the biggest thing was getting these kids to go home and teach it to their parents.
Right.
You know, go tell your mom and dad what you did, because, and that's all. I only really have fire to reference right now. Hopefully, I'll have. You know, well, I don't want to say hopefully I'll have more, because I don't want any disasters to happen up here.
Right.
But being in emergency management for a year now, I'm learning more. There are more disasters out there, but there's a lot of parents that don't even know how to operate a fire extinguisher. You know, there's a lot
Oh,
of
yeah,
parents
absolutely.
that don't know how to change the batteries in their smoke detectors. So for me, when I did fire prevention through the schools, it was important. They were an avenue to not just them, but to that get to their home and maybe other older brothers and sisters and help them. I mean, we've had situations where a little girl was able to save an extra neighbor's house because she heard a smoke detector going off and knew what it sounded like and called 911 and saved the property. You know, we've had other people who have been able to wake up their parents and get their parents out of the house.
Right.
And kids are amazing. You know, they take direction good and they very well, and they take this very, very seriously, where adults are like, that's never going to happen to me. You know?
Right. Well, it's kind of embarrassing, but just this summer, my daughter's at home from college. My son, who's between his junior and senior year, my wife and I were sound asleep, and about 2 o'clock in the morning, our house fire alarm, you know, smoke detector goes off, and it is just unbearable, so loud. I'm the only one that gets up. I run around real quick. I look, and my smoke detector was just going haywire.
Okay, but
And
still.
it was going haywire, and I think it was just from dust, and so I take it off the wall, and I'm trying to quiet it down, and those three never even woke.
Oh no.
And so that just goes to show you that, you know, that smoke detector's been on that wall for years, and battery changed religiously, but those three never even woke. And why?
Yeah.
Because again, it did not register in their head, you know, in their sleep and in their what it meant.
Because they haven't been trained in
Right,
it.
exactly.
You know, I know that with Audrey, we push the thing and she knows the sound
Exactly.
and she goes outside.
And so I guess what my point is that we can't take it for granted as like a school. That's a great example. You got a family of 4 laying there, 3 who sleep right through a loud smoke detector.
Jeez.
And again, because you take for granted, or you just assume that no, they'll hear it, they'll get up and run, or look for the fire, or and so you can't assume that 400 kids in the school are going to know what to do, and you need to train them.
Absolutely.
And you need to get them used to hearing these things, even if you don't ever imagine something like that could happen. Again, a tornado.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Holbrook's not a place for a tornado. We don't need to practice this. No, you can't take that for granted. You need to practice it. It was just 2 days ago, a train was knocked off the tracks by a cell just south of Phoenix.
Yeah.
Yes, and they're pretty sure it was a tornado. And if you
Whoa.
looked, it knocked over 100 cars off the tracks.
Whoa.
So, and even if it wasn't a tornado, it was
Still.
strong enough to do that damage to a moving train and knock its cars off the tracks. That means it's going to do some damage to our houses, our schools, and
Absolutely.
that could happen in northern Arizona just as well as it could happen in southern. And
Well,
so,
That's a great points, and I want to thank you again for coming on here. This has been a great show. I hope everybody at home realize this is how important this is. Make sure that your schools do have these plans, and make sure you have them at home for your own children. Thank you for watching Safe and Sound, and we will see you next month. This episode of Safe and Sound was sponsored by Ladies Day, LLC.